Meet Max, a fluffy golden retriever who thinks he is the smartest creature in his house, maybe even smarter than his human, Tom. Every morning, Max's day starts with the same ritual. Wake Tom up, get breakfast, and steal anything edible before Tom realizes what's happening. Tom, however, is not your average sleepy pet owner. He's an engineer, organized, and proud of his unbreakable morning routine. What Tom doesn't know is that Max has been secretly studying him for weeks, like a furry detective with a PhD in human behavior. It all started on a rainy Tuesday when Tom left his toast unattended for 2 seconds. That's all Max needed. The golden blur leaped onto the chair, snatched the toast, and sat in his bed pretending to be innocent, crumbs all over his nose. Tom looked at him. "Max, did you just steal my breakfast again?" Max wagged his tail, tilted his head, and gave his signature "I'm cute, so you can't be mad" look. Tom sighed. "You're lucky, you're adorable." That day, Max realized something powerful. Humans are weak against cuteness. So began the great breakfast heist. Max created an entire strategy. He knew the sound of the toaster, the rhythm of the coffee machine, and exactly when Tom would check his phone. Each morning, Max executed his plan with precision. A paw on the chair, a quick bite, and an innocent stare. By Friday, Tom had lost 5 toasts, 2 pancakes, and a full omelet. He finally decided to install a pet cam. "Let's see how you do now, Mr. Toast Thief," Tom said proudly. The next morning, Max saw the small black camera blinking red on the counter. He tilted his head and thought, "Oh, challenge accepted." The dog pretended to sleep as Tom prepared breakfast. When Tom left the room for a moment, Max slowly got up and turned the camera around with his nose, pointing it toward the ceiling. Mission secure. He then jumped up, grabbed the toast, and retreated to his dog bed like a furry secret agent. When Tom returned, he checked the footage and gasped. The video showed only the ceiling fan spinning. Max looked at him, smugly, chewing. Tom stared at his dog. "You're not a pet, you're a criminal mastermind." And so, a new war began. The human versus the dog. Battle for breakfast. Tom tried locking the kitchen door. Max learned how to nudge it open with his paw. Tom moved the toaster to a higher shelf. Max dragged a chair across the floor like a furry construction worker. Every day was a new episode of chaos. Then one day, Tom decided to outsmart Max once and for all. He cooked a plate of scrambled eggs, put it on the counter, and hid behind the door with his phone camera ready. Max, unaware of the trap, trotted in happily, sniffed the air, and thought, scrambled eggs. My favorite. He looked left, looked right, and began to climb the chair. Just as he reached for the plate flash, Tom jumped out, caught Red Pod. Max froze. His eyes widened like he'd seen a ghost. Then, instead of guilt, the dog sneezed, sending the eggs flying into Tom's face. There was silence. Then Tom started laughing uncontrollably, covered in egg. Max wagged his tail, happy as ever, thinking, mission accomplished. By the end of that day, Tom gave up the war. He sat down with his dog and shared half his toast. "You win, buddy," Tom said. "You're the boss of breakfast." Max barked, proud and satisfied, and licked Tom's cheek, sealing the peace treaty. But deep inside, Max was already planning the next operation. After weeks of winning the breakfast war, Max, the golden retriever genius, was living his best life. His owner, Tom, had finally surrendered to the chaos and made peace with the fact that sharing food with Max was part of the household treaty. But Max wasn't satisfied. Oh no, victory had made him ambitious. He wanted more. He wanted dinner. It all began one Friday evening when Tom decided to host a small dinner party for his colleagues. He spent the whole afternoon preparing his famous spaghetti and meatballs, a recipe he guarded like a family secret. The smell of sizzling garlic and fresh tomato sauce filled the kitchen, and Max was losing his mind. He sat by the counter, drooling, tail sweeping the floor like a broom. Tom looked down and said, "Not this time, buddy. This dinner is for humans." Max tilted his head, pretending to understand, but in his mind, he was already plotting. "Not for dogs. We'll see about that." By the time the guests arrived, for people in crisp suits carrying bottles of wine, Max had already gone into full spy mode. He watched them carefully, studying their habits, especially the one who dropped a breadstick on the floor. "Ah," he thought. The weak link, the dinner began smoothly. Laughter filled the room, glasses clinked, and Tom bragged about his new kitchen gadgets, including his motion sensor trash can and dog-proof pantry. "Dog-proof, huh?" one guest said, chuckling. "I heard your dog's a bit of a genius." Tom smirked. "He used to be, but I've learned his tricks." Max, sitting silently under the table, narrowed his eyes. Used to be, oh, the insult. It was at that moment Max made his move. Tom was busy refilling glasses when Max gently nudged the tablecloth with his nose. The edge of the tablecloth caught on a plate, the one with the largest meatball. The meatball rolled slowly toward the edge. Every guest gasped. Tom turned around, horrified. "Max." But it was too late. The meatball hit the floor, and Max lunged with the reflexes of a lion. One gulp, gone. The guests burst into laughter. "Well, it looks like someone approves of your cooking," one said. Tom sighed. Yeah, laugh it up. He's unstoppable." But Max wasn't done. He waited patiently, pretending to be sorry, lowering his ears, giving the world's most innocent face. Tom relaxed, thinking the crisis was over. Then, when everyone got up to move to the living room, Max jumped on the opportunity, literally. He leaped onto a chair, climbed onto the table, and in a single glorious moment of freedom, began eating spaghetti straight from the serving bowl. Tom froze. Max, no, not the sauce, but the guests. Oh, the guests were delighted. Phones came out instantly. "Oh my gosh, he's eating like a person. Look at him twirling the spaghetti with his tongue. This is gold." Max, unaware of his rising fame, kept eating with absolute joy, sauce dripping from his nose, a single noodle hanging from his ear. Tom rushed to stop him but slipped on a puddle of spilled spaghetti. The entire table wobbled, glasses toppled, and one guest screamed as the wine splashed across her white dress. It was complete chaos. For a few seconds, time froze. Then, from under the table, Max popped his head up, eyes wide and covered in red sauce, looking completely proud of himself. Everyone burst out laughing. Even Tom couldn't stay mad. He sat on the floor, wiping his face, saying, "You're unbelievable." The guests posted the video online that very night. The caption read, "The golden retriever who crashed dinner like a gentleman." By morning, the video had gone viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments, "Smartest dog ever. I want to eat dinner with Max. This dog deserves his own cooking show." Tom woke up to his phone buzzing nonstop. When he saw the video, he groaned. "Oh no, you're famous now." Max, lying on his back, on the couch, wagged his tail lazily as if to say, "Took you long enough to realize." That afternoon, a reporter from a local news channel called, "We'd love to feature Max in our Pets of the Week segment," she said. Tom laughed in disbelief. "You want to interview my dog?" "Yes," she replied. "He's hilarious." And so, 2 days later, Max was sitting in front of a camera wearing a tiny boatie while Tom answered questions about his brilliant, mischievous dog. When they played the spaghetti video on TV, Max barked proudly, the star of his own show. The segment went viral again, and soon, Max was an internet icon. He even got a sponsorship from a pet food brand that sent him boxes of treats. Tom couldn't believe it. "You destroy one dinner and suddenly you're a celebrity," he said, shaking his head. Max barked twice and pranced around, clearly enjoying the attention. That night, Tom made spaghetti again, this time just for Max. He placed a small plate on the floor and said, "All right, superstar. Dinner's served." Max wagged his tail, took a big bite, and gave a small bark of approval. As Tom watched his dog eating happily, he couldn't help but smile. "Honestly," he said softly, "you might be the smartest and funniest thing that ever happened to me." Max looked up at him, spaghetti sauce still on his nose, and gave him one loving lick on the hand. It was messy, it was chaotic, it was perfect. And as the night went quiet, Max stretched out on the couch, thinking, maybe tomorrow, breakfast in bed. After his viral fame, Max's life had turned into a full-blown comedy show. Every morning, Tom would wake up to hundreds of messages, emails, and unbelievably fan mail for his dog. There were drawings of Max eating spaghetti, memes of Max in sunglasses, and even a few parody videos where people tried to crash dinner like Max. Tom couldn't walk him in peace anymore. Everywhere they went, people shouted, "Hey, that's the spaghetti dog. Max, do the thing with the noodles." Max, of course, adored every bit of attention. He'd wag his tail like a celebrity greeting fans on a red carpet. Tom, however, wasn't as thrilled. "Great," he muttered one morning. "My dog's more famous than me." But then came the email that changed everything. Tom blinked. Oh no, not again. The email explained that it was a televised competition celebrating the smartest, funniest, and most talented dogs in America. The producers wanted Max to perform his dinner table comedy routine live in front of an audience. Tom groaned. "He's not trained for that. He just eats my spaghetti." Max, hearing the word spaghetti, perked up and barked twice. Tom sighed. Yeah, I know, you're interested." And so, against his better judgment, Tom agreed. The stage was massive, bright lights, cheering crowds, cameras everywhere. Dogs of every breed were lined up backstage. Some were doing flips, others playing piano keys with their paws, and one tiny poodle was painting with a brush in its mouth. Tom whispered, "Max, we're doomed." Max, however, was completely calm. He sat there, licking his paw like he owned the place. When it was their turn, the host announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Max, the golden retriever, who outsmarted his owner and broke the internet." The crowd roared. Tom led Max onto the stage. The judges, a panel of pet trainers, a celebrity, and a comedian smiled warmly. "So, Tom," the host said, "what's Max going to do for us today?" Tom rubbed his neck awkwardly. He's going to recreate his famous dinner stunt." The audience chuckled. Tom set up a small table with a bowl of spaghetti and a glass of water. "All right, Max, remember, be good." But Max was already in character. He trotted up to the chair, climbed onto it gracefully, and sat at the table like a gentleman. The audience gasped in delight. Then, with perfect comedic timing, he leaned over, sniffed the spaghetti, and started slurping it like a pro, noodles flying, tail wagging, eyes sparkling. The judges burst into laughter. The comedian judge was practically crying. "He's eating like a human." Then, as if he'd rehearsed it, Max paused mid-bite, looked straight into the camera, and gave a proud little bark sauce on his nose, a noodle dangling from his mouth. The crowd went wild. But the real magic happened when Tom, trying to play along, picked up a fork and said, "Max, you can't just eat." And Max, with a perfectly timed paw tap, pushed the fork away and continued eating with his mouth like a boss. The audience erupted. Standing ovation. Phones were out again, recording every second. By the time the routine ended, Max bowed, literally bowed, and Tom just stood there in disbelief. They didn't win first place, that went to the painting poodle, but Max didn't care. He had won hearts. By the next morning, their performance had over 30 million views online. News outlets called him the dog with dinner manners and the canine comedian. Brands reached out for collaborations. One even sent him a mini chef's hat and apron. Tom tried to stay humble, but deep down, he was proud. His goofy golden retriever had turned the internet into one giant laughter club. Months passed. The hype eventually slowed down, but Max's charm never faded. Tom began to make short weekly videos of Max's Monday moments. Sometimes, Max tried to help with chores like folding laundry, which ended in disaster, or pretended to drive the car while Tom filmed. People loved it. Every video was filled with laughter, warmth, and that unspoken bond between man and dog, the kind that only pet owners understand. One evening, Tom sat on the porch with Max, watching the sunset. "You know," Tom said softly, "I used to think you were just a handful of trouble." Max tilted his head, listening. "But you made life brighter." Tom continued. "You made people laugh when they needed it most, even me." Max rested his head on Tom's lap and gave a slow, happy sigh. Tom smiled. "You're not just a dog, are you? You're a four-legged comedian with perfect timing." Max wagged his tail lazily as if to agree. The crickets chirped. The sky glowed orange, and for a moment, everything was perfect. A year later, Max's videos had inspired a wave of funny dog challenges online. People everywhere were teaching their pets silly tricks, laughing, bonding, and sharing joy. Tom had no idea his dog would start a movement, but he was glad he did, because in a world that often felt serious and rushed, Max reminded everyone that laughter, love, and a little bit of mischief could make life worth living. As Tom uploaded another video titled Max vs. the vacuum cleaner, he looked at his furry best friend and said, "Ready for round 2." Max barked twice, which, in his language, clearly meant, "Let's make the world laugh again."